What's up everyone, EJK here, and another request from Alt Grevin. Shoutouts to you. I know you've been watching my videos for a while. You asked, can you please explain the Maru version of Proxy Factory Starport? And then you gave a couple games, and um, let's see. So you said you like to play this build on ladder, but I'm not sure how to react from what I scouted. In the game versus Patience, you played for Scargate against Stargate, which looked like a BO win, correct. But he gets supply blocked to 43. I don't know if this was a mistake or if he was expecting to lose more. So he's basically asking about the transition, builds that tends to be good against, builds that it might not be good against. I also miss a game which the opponent went robo. I would assume that I transition out like Maru vs. Zest game. When is it possible to bunker rush to natural, or is this a bad idea? Straight off the top, bunker rushing the natural is a bad idea. It doesn't align with the game plan of the build itself, which I'll be going more into momentarily. There we go. So the first game here we have is an example between Maru vs. Patience from IEM Katowice 2015, and the build that Patience goes for is a proxy Stargate. And Grevin is right that this proxy factory play is somewhat of a soft to hard counter build order to proxy tech rushes of any kind. Stargate, Robotics Facility, even Twilight Council. I mean, against Twilight Council into like either Proxy Blink or Proxy DTs, I think it's just a straight up win because you don't have any way to deal with the Widow Mine in the main base. For the Proxy Stargate, it's okay. You're probably going to take a lot of damage as a Protoss player just because the Proxy Stargate does delay your Stalker, I believe, or Mothership Core, depending on what you do. Like, you can either get Mothership Core and Warp Gate, Stalker and Mothership Core, or Stalker and Warp Gate. You can't get all three when you're going for Proxy Oracle. So, one of the things to note is that to be able to stop this build from doing terrible amounts of damage, you need some sort of detection. In this case, the Protoss player has the Oracle and the Proxy Stargate, but it is proxied and it's on the other side of the map, and this build will hit around the time that your opponent is trying to harass with the Oracle. So the worst case scenario is your opponent somehow scouts that you're going for a factory type play, and the Proxy Oracle doesn't do any damage and instead goes straight to the main base and deals with the Widow Mine and Hellions, and you end up playing a relatively even game from there with the opportunity to do a lot more harass damage. If you want to see another example of this working and going towards the mid game, I'm not going to show the video because it's behind a paywall, but Maru versus Myung-Sik on Van Nuys Research Station, I believe it was game 1 from the round of 16 in GSL. Maru does a proxy factory play against Myung-Sik's. It wasn't a proxy Stargate, it was just a standard Stargate, I believe, and he goes up to an Oracle and then he makes Phoenixes, and Maru does a very good job of identifying that Myung-Sik went for the Stargate play first of all, seeing the Oracle, and then going for the Phoenixes and reacting to that accordingly as well. But yeah, if you guys want to check that out, then feel free to do so, but until it's like not behind a paywall, I'm not going to touch it, just because I have respect for GSL. So this proxy play comes in at about the 6:15 minute mark. It's important to note. Proxy Oracle is out around the 5-minute 25-second mark, depending on where it's placed and how fast you're rushing it out. In this case, Patience is going for a very fast command center as well. But this build did a lot of damage because all Patience had was, he didn't even make a Stalker, he made a Sentry instead. And he had nothing at home to defend except for Mothership Core with Photon Overcharge, which it's going to eventually shut down the Hellions and Widow Mine, but you still have a lot of opportunity to get a lot of volleys off with the Hellions before they actually get shut off. Now Maru's pushing out here because he knows that he knows exactly what his opponent's done, and so he knows he can kind of pressure the map because of the fact that Patience's Oracle, it used the Revelation ability, so since it used the Revelation ability, it's not going to have enough energy to do harassment, so that's why he can sort of leave his main base undefended at this point. As for the actual build of it, I think it's pretty safe to just follow exactly what Maru was doing. The important things to note here is that his SCV scouted the proxy oracle happening, or at least it scouted the double gas, no cybernetics core, warp gate research going, and he made exactly 6 Marines before making a reactor, and then he made a command center. Ooh. Yikes, that hurts. And then you just kind of transition out of it by building a 2nd and 3rd barracks, adding 2 tech labs, and you can continue to make Widow Mines like this. Against me, in the Maru versus Myungsik game, Myungsik has a Phoenix to shut down the medevac harass. That will happen if you encounter Stargate openers, and in that case, Maru made a Viking and continued to do some drop harass, and also pressured with his Marines as well. Because knowing that there's a Phoenix out means that there wouldn't, instead of having a 2nd Oracle, you have a Phoenix. Instead of progressing your tech in other ways, or perhaps adding more gateways, or using your resources in another manner, you have Phoenixes. And Phoenixes aren't very great at defending multiple areas of attacks. They also aren't that great at defending Marine pushes, so like a good reaction if you see a Oracle into Phoenix play is to push out and continue to do the double-pronged medevac harass along with a Marine poke out. Maru is now pushing out because he has, well, he's doing a concussive shell push, and he also has, well, he's doing a really fast concussive shell push. And he also he doesn't even have his Marauder with his army yet, but he also has the turrets down in his main and actual base so that he can move out safely. He's also done a lot of damage at this point, and he's delayed Patience's tech. That was a big mistake by Patience, being supply blocked there. This drop is going to do a lot more damage. That Colossi could have been out a good 10 to 15 seconds earlier, and if it was out earlier, Patience could have perhaps survived longer, outlasted the damage, and been able to perhaps turtle down and to secure a, I don't know, be able to progress the game longer and perhaps make a comeback. But for the most part, that game, it was kind of a build order win, and let's see, so is there a general rule in which order I transition out of this when gas racks fly back in the mid game? I like 2 base, 5 racks, Vikingless style. Yes, 2 base, 5 racks, Vikingless style is perfectly fine. I think also a good substitute, like a good transition variation if you run into Phoenix play, because Phoenixes and Colossi and turtling on 2 base kind of shut down the whole Vikingless style, so you can't really be aggressive against a Protoss player only on 2 bases. So a better reaction would be to take a fast 3rd base against Phoenix play, and then go up to your 5 barracks, your Widow Mine, your medevacs, your engineering bay. Well, engineering bay, that's a bit... of course you're going to have an engineering bay. I mean medevacs, yeah. And then do a kind of delayed push with a heavier economy behind it. The next game we have here is an example between Maru versus Hurricane. Actually, let's do Maru versus Zest first. Both of these are played on King Sejong Station, a map we no longer play on. Rest in peace. Wow, 113 to 122. It's a pretty even statistics for this map, and that's also a lot of games played on this map alone. Yikes. But we're going to do this game first, because in this game, Zest opens up for a very standard play Twilight Council into Robotics Facility. Oh, it's also important to note that this is a Gateway Scout probe. Protoss players will Gateway Scout you because they are afraid of Proxy 2 Rexes. So it's important to get your SCV out on the map around the 2-minute mark, 2:15 at the very latest. And what Maru does is he scouts around for some proxies. He takes the scenic route to his proxy location before building the factory. But you need the SCV out on the map before this probe scouts you. Otherwise, Zest will know that there's a SCV out on the map and that there is most likely a proxy, and he will scout for it and it'll get countered. That's happened to me on ladder, believe it or not. I've actually been doing this build a lot recently just to test what it could be good against and what it could be bad against, and the general kinks in the build and what the purposes of it is, and just to get a better feel of it as well. And one of the things that happened was I lost because I set my SCV out at the wrong time, and the Protoss player was able to scout that there was an additional SCV out on the map, and he was able to just blind counter me and do a counter 3-gate to my proxy factory play. So in this game, Zest goes for a standard Mothership Core expand into Twilight Council and Robotics Facility. Shout out to the tank meme. It's a very standard way of playing. I think this is a very straightforward standard strategy that you'll encounter a lot on ladder. Zest and Hero especially have popularized this build, abusing Blink Stalkers and their ridiculous cooldown on their Blink ability. So what we get to see here is the timing of how the proxy factory, the Widowmine, the double Hellion harass hits compared to, or like in relation to standard Protoss play, and how much damage exactly you can get done as a result of having your buildings in a proxy location rather than from your base. You save about, I believe it was like 20 to 30 seconds. Your rush is increased by that amount based on the proxy location and based on the fact that it's proxied. So this does get to hit sooner, and all it does is you get to attack sooner and you get to start applying Widowmine pressure before, like, you get an additional Widowmine shot off depending on how late your opponent's detection is. And in this case, Zest is going for a fairly fast Twilight Council before the 5-minute mark. He gets it before his... Oh, he made the Stalker and then the Mothership Core and then the Twilight Council. Okay. But still pretty fast. And so he's going to get the Twilight Council and then he's got the Robo Facility. The Robo Facility usually goes down around the 5 to 5:15 minute mark if you're going for Robotics Facility first. But if you're going for Twilight Council first, it's going to get delayed about 30 seconds. And that's enough of a timing to allow you to do a lot more damage than... or to do additional damage and to like just get marginal benefits out of this attack, which is all Maru is looking for. So he's doing this push out as well because he knows his opponent is going for a Mothership Core expand. He saw the Gateway Probe scout, and also knowing that it's Zest, a player who plays very macro oriented, Maru opts not to scout and just assume what his opponent is doing. So this push comes around the 6-15 minute mark, similar to the game versus Patience. And what happens here is Zest is caught completely off guard. The Widowmine killing a Stalker, very effective. These Hellions roasting probes alive, which should not even be legal. Oh my gosh. Good micro by Zest. But as we see on the production tab, Zest no longer has any money for a Robotics Facility, and he needs the Robotics Facility to be able to shut down the shut down the Widowmine harass. And so what he does is he cancels Blink, and he starts a Robotics Facility immediately because he knows that he needs detection of some sort to be able to stop this. And all of his probes are also at the natural as well. He has his entire army plus the Mothership Core at his natural to consolidate defenses, which I really like by him. However, that kind of keeps him away from his gases. It's really unfortunate that Widowmine was able to burrow and killing that Mothership Core. That just adds insult to injury from how far behind Zest already was. And as a result, this harass just kind of continues because Maru, with his initial medevac with Widow Mines and 2 Hellions, was able to see the Twilight Council, so he's able to keep doing this drop harass, and he doesn't need to float his buildings back immediately because he knows that there's no Stargate on the way, there's no immediate counter pressure, there's nothing really Zest can do to stop this harass, so Maru is free to make more Widow Mines and continue doing this harass, delaying mining time and slowly getting ahead. This game kind of just, it's already over, and Maru just has to macro up. His medevac timing is going to do a lot of damage. There's nothing Zest can do to stop it. We're just going to take a quick look at the expansion timing, though, of when you want to expand, start your natural command center. Let's see, where is it? He starts at around like the 6-ish minute mark, I believe. Okay, he starts at about now. We see it on the mini-map. Okay, so he starts it before his, before his depot that brings him up to 51 supply. So you should be at a 43 supply cap. So, okay, he starts his command center right now at the 5:45 minute mark. It's like 5:47, but right before the attack actually starts is when he starts it. So it should be before 6 minutes. It's important to note that it's right before that depot that Maru just placed down. We saw he did that in the main base on his point of view. If you place that depot down before the 51 depot, see what supply he's at right now. That's the 51 depot that he placed down. It's going to delay your command center a lot more than you have to. And I believe he's also, okay, he also made a reactor after his 5th Marine as well. He knows that he didn't need a 6th Marine, so he didn't need to continue making Marines, and because he made the 2 Hellions instead of additional Widow Mines, he could afford the reactor faster. If you do go for additional Widow Mines, and you do like a double Widow Mine drop instead of 1 Widow Mine and 2 Hellions, you're not going to be able to afford the reactor fast enough, so that's just something to take into account of why Maru goes for the Hellions over the Marine, or the Widow Mine. The last game we have here is a game between Maru versus Hurricane, again on King Sejong Station. And this is where Hurricane does a fairly standard build. He goes for a robotics facility first, but because this is King Sejong Station, there's a very close rush distance between the 2 naturals so that the mothership core can kind of poke relatively safely without getting picked off, and then going back free of charge and being able to get a good scout as well. Hurricane is going to be doing a mothership core poke with a stalker as well, and we're going to see how this build interacts with doing when your opponent plays standard but has his units out of position. So I guess kind of the bottom line of this proxy factor build is that if your opponent does anything out of the really ordinary and he somehow kind of deviates his play in any aggressive way, this build will kind of be a soft to hard counter to it depending on how your opponent reacts. So like when your mothership core is at your opponent's, like at the natural over here, and you have a medevac with a Widow Mine and 2 Hellions flying into your main, you're kind of screwed as a Protoss because your mothership core is completely out of position, and you need that photon overcharge to not do too much damage. One important thing to see is that Hurricane is chronoing out this stalker. I don't believe Maru sees it, though. But he does see that this expansion is a little bit late. If we see one gas like this, an expansion like after 4 minutes, you know that instead of chronoing, or instead of prioritizing on a Nexus and just minimal defense like a mothership core to defend against things like a Reaper, your opponent is chronoing out gateway units and not focusing his chrono boosts on probes. We see here that it's 19 SCVs versus 21 probes. It's relatively even because of the amount of chrono that Hurricane has invested in probes is very little. And he also puts his command center down or his Nexus down right before the 5-minute mark. Not really sure why he had the second assimilator before his Nexus either, and he doesn't start mining from it immediately as well. But Maru also walling off here, it's important to have a wall off, because if there's a proxy oracle that comes and you don't have the wall off, sometimes what people like to do is they have a stalker and a proxy oracle attack at the same time, and even though you'll have 6 marines to defend against the proxy oracle, if there's a stalker as well, you're not going to have enough marines to defend against both of the attack, and you're going to end up, it's going to be a crazy base trade scenario, which will kind of spiral out of your control a lot faster than your opponents. Because the widow mines that you need to defend against oracles on the other side of the map, you lose your marine count, you don't have an engineering bay or anything like that. So the damage that your opponent can do is a lot more than the damage that you can do. And this depot wall off also allows your opponent to not be able to just walk up the ramp and do constant pressure with the stalker mothership core harass like we saw what Hurricane did right here as well. He had to back off because he couldn't apply any more. Well, he didn't want to apply any more pressure. He needs to get back as soon as possible because there could be a factory play on the way. Seeing the 3 depots, seeing all those marines, no Reaper, pretty much means that there's a factory somewhere. He just doesn't know that it's proxied. He was probably thinking that it's in the main base, in which case this attack would have hit about 30 seconds later. But instead, this attack is already here. All of Hurricane's units were out of position. The photon overcharge is extremely late. These Hellions end up getting a lot of volleys off, and there's not really much 2 stalkers can do. They don't have the DPS necessary to shut down the double Hellion harass with the Widow Mine fast enough. And as a result, Hurricane's already down by 11 workers. Maru's command center is on the way, and the reaction we see here is that Maru scouted that there's a robotics facility, so he ends up making a tech lab on the factory, and he ends up making a siege tank, because there's not really any reason to make additional widow mines when your opponent has observers out really fast. But getting a siege tank, and it also happens to be a good thing to do on this map as well. Like, it's completely map dependent to make a siege tank like this, and then to do a push with marines and medevacs. It also is very important to know how much damage you do, so that you're, like, Maru knows he killed a lot of probes and that he's ahead. That scan also confirms how far ahead he is, so he knows that his opponent isn't going to be able to produce a lot of units at once. Like, he's not going to be able to chrono out probes to recover his economy and make immortals to shut down any kind of early aggression with siege tanks. And with this clever little positioning, Maru is able to deny some gas that Hurricane doesn't actually need, but it's just an annoyance for Hurricane nonetheless. So the siege tank kind of just, it's just there to do damage. It's not really meant to do anything than to apply pressure. You want to keep the siege tank alive. It's a priority to keep it alive rather than to do damage. And I believe Maru's follow-up would have been a marine tank push. Or I believe it is a marine tank push in this game. I'm not sure how long it lasts. I don't remember exactly. But it's just to start pumping out siege tanks, start applying pressure, he force the photon overcharge, and then he's going to do a follow-up attack with his marines and his tanks later on. Excuse me, I got yawn. And these stalkers out from Hurricane are not really able to do anything. He tried to do a push at the natural that didn't accomplish anything. And now he's just kind of behind in every manner, down 12 workers, not including mules. He has a smaller army, and these stalkers end up getting trapped as well. There's not really much Hurricane can do after taking so much damage, and the reason why he took so much damage was because he had his mothership core doing some pressure. Not that common on ladder, but still a viable build that we see from time to time. And because his mothership core was out of position, he wasn't able to do he wasn't able to take less damage that he would have liked to, because he was going for robotics facility. So he would have had detection out in time. His army just wasn't close by, and so Mar is able to do a lot of damage and end the game relatively fast. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Grevin. I guess just the breakdown of the video is, it's a good build to do. Just, you should still SCV scout. You use your like 14 SCV scout around the 2-minute mark to go straight to your opponent's base. That's around the time you should send out your proxy as well, and you can like delay it to scout for proxy gates or anything, but you just need it out before the gateway probe so that your opponent doesn't know that's a proxy. And then to depending on what your opponent does, like if it's a non-Stargate opener, or if it's a Stargate opener and your opponent goes for a Phoenix, then you can like do pressure with a Viking and some medevacs. Or if it's not a Stargate opener, you can continue to make Widow Mines and just float your starport back. It's a very non-committal attack, just making Widow Mines from your factory and continuing to harass with your medevac in general. And you also get a good amount of scouting information of what your opponent is doing as well with this harass, which is the most important part of this build, so you can continue on to the mid game, do either like a 5 racks or a delayed 5 racks with a faster third command center follow-up. It all really depends on what your opponent's doing, but you should have the necessary scouting information to make a intelligent decision based off of what you see with this build. So yeah, hopefully that's a good analysis of this build. And if you guys have any other VODs or games you want me to go over, just leave a comment below and I will get to it as soon as possible. Sorry that this took so long. I've just been very, I guess like busy wanting to ladder, but then I recently hurt my back, so I haven't been able to do as much. So I've been watching a lot of VODs and I decided to get this done, blah 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 blah. I will get to it as soon as possible. That's the bottom line. Till next time, peace out guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video.